Did you feel it too? That hollow feeling when you heard the news? When someone who shaped your life through their art, music, or presence suddenly wasn't there anymore. Number 11. Chadwick Boseman. Remember waking up to the news that the Black Panther was gone? August 28, 2020 shocked the world when Chadwick Boseman died at just 43 years old after a private 4-year battle with colon cancer. What made this loss particularly devastating was learning that Boseman had filmed some of his most physically demanding roles, including Black Panther, while undergoing chemotherapy and multiple surgeries. Boseman's portrayal of King T'Challa wasn't just another superhero role, it was a cultural phenomenon that gave Black children a hero who looked like them. The Wakanda Forever salute became a symbol of Black excellence and pride worldwide. But beyond the Marvel Universe, Boseman brought dignity and depth to every character he portrayed. His transformative performances as Jackie Robinson in 42, James Brown in Get On Up, and Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall in Marshall showcased his remarkable range. What's heartbreaking is realizing that we were just beginning to witness the flowering of an extraordinary talent. His co-stars described him as humble, hardworking, and deeply thoughtful, someone who understood the responsibility of his platform. Ryan Coogler, who directed Boseman in Black Panther, described him as an epic firework display. Coogler wrote after Boseman's death, "I noticed then that Chad was an anomaly. He was calm, assured, constantly studying, but also kind, comforting, had the warmest laugh in the world, and eyes that seen much beyond his years but could still sparkle like a child seeing something for the first time." Even more poignant were the stories that emerged about Boseman's hospital visits to young cancer patients while privately fighting his own battle, never seeking publicity for these acts of kindness. His final tweet celebrated Kamala Harris's selection as a vice presidential nominee, showing his commitment to celebrating others' achievements even as his health failed. Number 10. Kobe Bryant. In a helicopter crash changed the world. On January 26, 2020, basketball legend Kobe Bryant, his 13-year-old daughter Gianna, and 7 others perished when their helicopter crashed in Calabasas, California. The shock was immediate and global. Kobe at just 41, his daughter just beginning her journey, gone in an instant. Mamba Mentality wasn't just a catchphrase, it was Kobe's philosophy about approaching life with absolute focus and dedication. For 20 years with the Los Angeles Lakers, fans watched him evolve from a teenage phenom into a 5-time NBA champion, 18-time All-Star, and Olympics gold medalist. His 60-point performance in his final NBA game felt like the perfect farewell to an extraordinary career. What made Kobe's death particularly painful was the sense that he was just beginning his second act. His Oscar-winning short film Dear Basketball showed his creative potential. He was coaching Gianna's basketball team, championing women's sports, writing children's books, and building business ventures, all while being a devoted father to 4 daughters. The images of mourners gathering spontaneously outside the Staples Center, the house that Kobe built, captured the collective grief. Basketball players wept openly on courts. Games paused for 24-second shot clock violations to honor his jersey number. Even those who weren't basketball fans felt the weight of this loss. Perhaps most heartbreaking was learning about the others on that helicopter, young teammates with their parents, coaches committed to youth sports, all headed to a basketball tournament. John, Carrie, and Alyssa Altobelli, Sarah and Peyton Chester, Christina Mauser, and pilot Ara Zobayan, their stories intertwined with the Bryants in a tragedy that reminded everyone how quickly life can change. Number 9. Robin Williams. How could someone who brought so much joy be in such pain? On August 11, 2014, the world lost Robin Williams to suicide at age 63, leaving fans wondering how the man who made everyone laugh couldn't escape his own demons. Williams was more than a comedian, he was a force of nature. His mind worked at dizzying speeds, creating connections and characters that left audiences and fellow comedians in awe. From his breakthrough as the alien Mork to his Oscar-winning performance in Good Will Hunting, Williams demonstrated extraordinary range. What made his films special was the humanity he brought to each character. As Mrs. Doubtfire, he showed the lengths a father would go to be with his children. As John Keating in Dead Poets Society, he inspired a generation to seize the day. As the genie in Aladdin, he created a character so vibrant that animators added extra scenes just to showcase his improvisational genius. The tragedy deepened when his widow, Susan Schneider-Williams, revealed that Robin had been suffering from Lewy body dementia, a progressive brain disorder that was misdiagnosed until his autopsy. In her essay titled "The Terrorist Inside My Husband's Brain," she described how this condition tormented him with symptoms including anxiety, delusions, and cognitive impairment. Fellow comedian Billy Crystal described Williams as the brightest star in the comedy galaxy. Their 30-year friendship included annual comic relief charity events co-hosted with Whoopi Goldberg. After Williams' death, Crystal simply said, "No words." Perhaps what hurt most was learning how Williams continued bringing joy to others even while suffering. He regularly visited children's hospitals, performed for troops in war zones, and was known for small acts of kindness toward fans and struggling fellow actors. The contrast between his public joy and private pain made his loss especially poignant. Number 8. Prince, Did You Hear the Doves Cry? On April 21, 2016, music innovator Prince died of an accidental fentanyl overdose at his Paisley Park home in Minnesota, leaving behind not just grief but questions about prescription drug dependency that would touch countless American families. At just 57, Prince Rogers Nelson had already lived several musical lifetimes. The 7-time Grammy winner and multi-instrumentalist defied categorization, blending funk, R&B, rock, pop, and soul into a sound uniquely his own. His legendary guitar skills, falsetto vocals, and theatrical performances made him a singular presence in music. What made Prince extraordinary wasn't just his 39 studio albums or 100 million records sold, it was his fearless artistic vision. He fought for creative control against record labels, changed his name to an unpronounceable symbol in protest, and wrote "slave" on his face during performances to highlight exploitative industry practices. The purple-loving icon created space for gender fluidity and sexual expression decades before such conversations entered the mainstream. From the androgynous styling of his early career to provocative lyrics that challenged conservative sensibilities, Prince expanded possibilities for artists who didn't fit conventional molds. Perhaps most heartbreaking was learning that the musician known for clean living had been privately struggling with chronic pain from years of physically demanding performances. Friends and family described how hip and knee problems from his acrobatic stage shows led to pain medication that ultimately resulted in his accidental overdose. Sheila E., longtime Prince collaborator, recalled, "He played through the pain all the time, but you'd never know." The revelation that even someone as disciplined as Prince could fall victim to the opioid crisis connected his death to a nationwide epidemic affecting countless families. The impromptu gatherings of mourners singing "Purple Rain" together outside venues worldwide spoke to how personally fans felt connected to him. Minneapolis, his hometown, bathed landmarks in purple light as radio stations played his music continuously. Number 7. David Bowie. How Do You Say Goodbye to a Starman? Just 2 days after releasing his final album Black Star on his 69th birthday, David Bowie died on January 10, 2016, after an 18-month battle with liver cancer that he had kept hidden from the public. Looking back, Black Star was Bowie's carefully crafted farewell. The lyrics and imagery, particularly in the video for the song Lazarus, which opens with Bowie in a hospital bed with bandaged eyes, take on profound meaning with the knowledge that he created this work while confronting his mortality. Throughout his 5-decade career, Bowie was rock's greatest shapeshifter, from Ziggy Stardust to the Thin White Duke to the suited elder statesman of alternative music. He constantly reinvented himself artistically, musically, and visually, giving permission to generations of outsiders to embrace their differences. What made his death particularly impactful was how he transformed even this final experience into art. Producer Tony Visconti wrote after Bowie's death, "His death was no different from his life, a work of art." Few artists have confronted their own ending with such creative intention. Bowie's influence extended far beyond music into fashion, film, painting, theater, and sexual identity. He helped countless young people feel less alone in their differentness. One fan wrote, "Thank you for helping me accept my bisexuality when I was a teen in the 70s when you said it was okay to be who you are." Perhaps most touching were the impromptu memorials in his birthplace of Brixton, London, where fans gathered to sing his songs together, many openly weeping. Similar scenes played out in Berlin, where Bowie lived during a creatively crucial period, and in New York, his adopted home. Longtime producer Bryant shared that he had received an email from Bowie just a week before his death that ended with the words, "Thank you for our good times, Brian, they will never rot." It was, said, a farewell message. Number 6, Whitney Houston. Can a voice that powerful just disappear? On February 11, 2012, the music world was stunned when Whitney Houston was found dead in a hotel bathtub at age 48, the result of drowning with heart disease and cocaine use as contributing factors. Houston possessed what many considered the greatest voice of her generation, a powerful instrument with stunning range and control. Her version of "I Will Always Love You" from the Bodyguard soundtrack became the best-selling single by a female artist in music history. With over 200 million records sold worldwide, 6 Grammy Awards, and 11 Billboard hits, her musical achievements were staggering. What made Whitney's death particularly tragic was the very public spiral that preceded it. Fans had watched her struggle with substance abuse play out in tabloids and in her 2005 reality show with then-husband Bobby Brown. The contrast between the elegant, composed superstar of the 80s and early 90s and her later troubles created a painful narrative of talent undermined by addiction. The timing added another layer of sadness. Houston died the night before the Grammy Awards, where she had triumphed so many times. The ceremony quickly incorporated a tribute by Jennifer Hudson, who performed "I Will Always Love You" with raw emotion. Producer Clive Davis, Houston's longtime mentor, went ahead with his pre-Grammy party in the same hotel where she died, turning it into an impromptu memorial. Perhaps most heartbreaking was the discovery that her daughter, Bobby Christina Brown, would die 3 years later in circumstances hauntingly similar to her mother, found unresponsive in a bathtub before passing away after months in a coma. Friends described Houston's warmth, generosity, and spirituality qualities often overshadowed by tabloid headlines. Gospel singer B.B. Winans recalled, "She was the girl who would call in the middle of the night just to say, 'I love you.'" These glimpses of the woman behind the voice made her loss feel even more profound. Number 5, Carrie Fisher. How do you replace a princess who became a general? On December 27, 2016, Carrie Fisher died at age 60 after suffering a cardiac event on a flight from London to Los Angeles 4 days earlier, leaving behind not just Star Wars fans but admirers of her sharp wit and mental health advocacy. Fisher's Princess Leia wasn't like other princesses. She was fiery, independent, and grabbed a blaster to join the fight rather than waiting to be rescued. For generations of girls, she represented a new kind of female character in science fiction. When she returned to the franchise decades later as General Organa in The Force Awakens, her evolution reflected her own journey from ingenue to wise leader. What made Fisher extraordinary beyond her iconic role was her brutal honesty about her struggles with bipolar disorder and addiction. Her semi-autobiographical novel, Postcards from the Edge, and one-woman show, Wishful Drinking, tackled these issues with humor and candor decades before celebrities openly discussing mental health became commonplace. Her death felt especially cruel, coming at the end of 2016, a year that had already claimed Prince, David Bowie, and many others. Fisher had just published her memoir, The Princess Diarist, appeared in Star Wars, The Force Awakens, and seemed to be entering a rewarding new phase of her career. The tragedy compounded when her mother, Hollywood legend Debbie Reynolds, died just 1 day after her daughter. Reynolds reportedly said, "I want to be with Carrie," shortly before suffering a fatal stroke. Their relationship, complicated, loving, and ultimately unbreakable, had been the subject of the documentary Bright Lights, which was released posthumously. Perhaps what resonated most about Fisher was her refusal to be anything but authentically herself. She embraced her Star Wars legacy while also mocking its excesses. She acknowledged her privileges while being brutally honest about Hollywood's treatment of women. In a world of carefully managed celebrity images, her raw honesty felt revolutionary. Number 4. Corey Monteith. How could someone so young with everything ahead of him be gone? On July 13, 2013, Glee star Corey Monteith was found dead in a Vancouver hotel room at just 31 years old from a toxic combination of heroin and alcohol, shocking the show's young fanbase and highlighting addiction's devastating reach. As Finn Hudson on the musical series Glee, Monteith portrayed the quarterback who discovered his love of singing, a character whose journey from popular jock to inclusive friend resonated with viewers navigating their own high school experiences. The show's messages about acceptance and finding your voice made his death feel particularly poignant. What made Monteith's story especially heartbreaking was his openness about his struggles with substance abuse. He had voluntarily entered rehab earlier that year, with the full support of his girlfriend and co-star Lea Michele and the show's creators. He had spoken candidly in interviews about his troubled adolescence, which included dropping out of school and entering rehab at 19. The grief played out both privately and publicly. His castmates, many in their 20s themselves, mourned their friend while having to continue filming. The show ultimately addressed Finn's death without specifying how he died in a tribute episode titled The Quarterback that remains one of television's most raw portrayals of young people grappling with unexpected loss. Perhaps most devastating was the reminder that addiction doesn't discriminate. Despite professional success, supportive relationships, and access to treatment, Monteith still fell victim to a disease that claims thousands of lives annually. His mother, Anne McGregor, later became an advocate for addiction awareness, saying, "I don't want people to think that using didn't come out of somewhere. He was in pain." The images of teenage fans holding candlelight vigils outside memorials highlighted how deeply television characters can affect young viewers. Many wrote that Finn Hudson had helped them feel less alone during difficult adolescent years, making the loss of the actor behind him feel intensely personal. Number 3. Amy Winehouse. Did we watch her destroy herself? On July 23, 2011, Amy Winehouse was found dead from alcohol poisoning in her London home at just 27, joining the tragic 27 club of musicians who died at that age and leaving behind questions about celebrity, addiction, and public voyeurism. Winehouse possessed a voice that seemed to come from another era, deep, soulful, and instantly recognizable. Her 2006 album Back to Black won 5 Grammy Awards and sold over 16 million copies worldwide, establishing her as one of the most distinctive vocalists of her generation. Her beehive hairdo, dramatic eyeliner, and tattoos created a visual signature as memorable as her sound. What made her death particularly tragic was how public her struggles had become. Paparazzi documented her deterioration, with tabloids publishing increasingly disturbing photos of her appearing disheveled or disoriented. Her battle with drugs and alcohol became fodder for late-night comedy shows, with her lyrics to Rehab, "They tried to make me go to rehab, I said no, no, no," taking on grimly prophetic significance. The posthumous documentary, Amy, forced uncomfortable questions about collective responsibility. It showed a young woman with unprocessed trauma, eating disorders, and mental health issues thrust into worldwide fame without adequate support. It implicated her father, management team, and even fans in creating unsustainable pressure. Perhaps most heartbreaking were the glimpses of the person behind the headlines. Friends described her sharp wit, generosity, and musical knowledge. Producer Mark Ronson called her "my musical soulmate" and "like a sister to me." Tony Bennett, who recorded the duet Body and Soul with Winehouse in what would be her final studio session, compared her to jazz greats Billie Holiday and Dinah Washington. The footage of crowds gathered outside her Camden home after her death, leaving bottles of vodka and cigarettes as tributes, highlighted the uncomfortable relationship between her art and her addictions. As one fan noted, "We loved her for the very things that were killing her." Number 2. Paul Walker. Can a single car crash shatter millions of hearts? On November 30th, 2013, Fast and Furious star Paul Walker died when the Porsche he was riding in crashed and burst into flames in Santa Clarita, California. At just 40 years old, his death during a charity event felt particularly cruel. Walker's Brian O'Connor character in the Fast and Furious franchise embodied California cool, the blonde, blue-eyed undercover cop who found family among the street racers he was sent to investigate. Across 6 films, fans watched his character evolve from lawman to outlaw to family man, paralleling the franchise's transformation from street racing films to globally successful action blockbusters. What made Walker's death especially impactful was learning about the person behind the celebrity. Stories emerged about his Reach Out worldwide charity, which provided first responders for disaster relief. He had founded the organization after personally traveling to Haiti following the 2010 earthquake. The accident occurred during a toy drive his charity was hosting. The Fast and Furious cast grief was palpable. Vin Diesel, who named his daughter Pauline in Walker's honor, wrote, "Pablo, I wish you could see the world right now, and the profound impact your full life has had on it, on us, on me." Their relationship, which began as co-stars and evolved into genuine brotherhood, added emotional depth to a franchise often dismissed as merely action movies. Perhaps most heartbreaking was learning about Walker's 15-year-old daughter, Meadow, who had recently moved in with him to strengthen their relationship after living primarily with her mother. His Fast and Furious co-stars became her extended family, with Diesel walking her down the aisle at her wedding years later. The outpouring at impromptu memorials at the crash site revealed how deeply fans connected with Walker. While some celebrities seem untouchable, Walker's easygoing demeanor and California casualness made fans feel like they knew him. As one mourner said, he seemed like someone you could have a beer with. Number 1. Philip Seymour Hoffman. How does someone with so much talent lose everything to addiction? On February 2, 2014, Oscar-winning actor Philip Seymour Hoffman was found dead from a drug overdose in his Manhattan apartment at age 46, with a needle still in his arm, a shocking end for an actor celebrated for his extraordinary range and commitment. Hoffman's talent seemed limitless. Whether playing Truman Capote in the film that won him an Academy Award, a charismatic cult leader in The Master, or a suspicious priest in Doubt, he disappeared into roles so completely viewers forgot they were watching Philip Seymour Hoffman. His ability to embody both leading men and character parts made him one of his generation's most respected actors. What made his death particularly devastating was its timing. After 23 years of sobriety, Hoffman had relapsed in 2013, completed a detox program, and seemed to be recovering. He was in the middle of filming the final Hunger Games movies and had recently premiered films at Sundance. Family, friends, and colleagues had no indication of the extent of his struggles. The circumstances of his death, alone in a bathroom with envelopes of heroin nearby, contrasted brutally with his public persona as a serious, intellectual performer. Directors he had worked with spoke of his meticulous preparation and total commitment to his craft. Fellow actors described his generosity in scenes and his mentorship of younger performers. Perhaps most heartbreaking was learning about his 3 young children, whom he had left his longtime Greenwich Village apartment to avoid exposing them to his drug use. His partner of 14 years, costume designer Mimi O'Donnell, later wrote poignantly about watching him struggle with addiction while trying to protect their family. The theater community's grief was particularly acute. Though known worldwide for his film work, Hoffman remained devoted to stage acting and directing. He was a founding member of the Labyrinth Theater Company and regularly returned to Broadway between film projects. The marquees of Broadway theaters dimmed their lights in his honor, a tradition reserved for those who have made significant contributions to the theater. Do we ever truly process these losses, or do they simply become part of who we are? When celebrities enter our lives through their art, their deaths can feel surprisingly personal, as though we've lost someone we actually knew. Perhaps that's because through their work, they helped us understand ourselves a little better,